Hello, everybody, and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Well, this is part two of a mindful kind of matrix series that I'm doing just on this particular subject. So, in part one, we were talking about expectations and silent contracts that we create in our minds and how that relates to potentially looking into different subjects that could be called conspiracy subjects and potential ways in which we can release the trauma of that from the disease of the imbalance of the mind and the body and how the mind and the body interact with each other. I probably said the synopsis better than I did actually the show, but there we go. And it's about breaking personal expectations. We covered started just to briefly cover the breaking of the personal expectations and the foundations of your belief system that we create and were created for us. And I mentioned something called Stockholm Syndrome and something called cognitive dissonance. So please do look up those two. I obviously described them briefly in part one. So so in part two, we're going to continue with this little chat about and it's a continuation of our expectations, contracts, mental constraints, and the breaking of these. Okay. Now, through my journey, I've realized that I had placed many mental constraints upon my own self. Not external ones as such, although there are plenty of those, in the way that we're educated. And one of the ways we're educated in is we're educated into fear. Fear of a consequence for not following what was prescribed to you via the schooling system or via social pressures. So, what we're talking about here is the mind control that has been placed upon us via the system and how we have been encouraged to create our own chains. So in part one, I talked about the expectations of being silent and not expressing yourself, and the creation of contracts between other people that create those expectations that, because they hadn't been verbalized, would ultimately create disappointment or failure or discord between those parties. Okay, the blame game almost, the division of, which is part of our control mechanism, isn't it? The division of. So when they can educate us, and they've been able to educate division into our own selves, then it becomes very difficult for a harmonious realm to exist and coexist because we have to fight our own mental constraints first. Now, again, I'm only talking about my own journey and the things that I have done personally and the lessons I've learned in the personal during my journey and my continued journey towards enlightenment and spiritual release of the constraints. And I'm a long way from it still, a long way. I understand that. But every day, in every way, it gets easier and easier. I nearly did a Frank Spencer monologue then. For those who remember Frank Spencer, a comedy program of the old UK then, don't want to go there. So breaking the mind control. Now, I've broken this down into one word, which is a trigger word. And I'm going to use the word cults because almost everything we do conceptually and physically could be classed as a cult activity. Now, we have been mind controlled from birth by family, friends, and the system. And that as they have, this isn't a blame game, or they shouldn't have done this. They were just following their control mechanism that they've been placed onto them. And so we get this continuation of until somebody says, no, I don't believe that. And then they take the step back and break the chain. And this is where we are at the moment. We're breaking the chains. We're breaking the mental chains that will then break the physical chains of our perception of the control mechanism that's around us. Now, for me, there are three main cults as such. And this is me personally, it's my view, how I see it. Many will see it completely different. It's not a problem. This is just a generalization of how I see what I see from my understanding, from my personal perspective of understanding. The first cult is religion. Actually, there's four major cults, actually. But the first one is religion. And religion is used to control the mind and to instill fear. Even though the Bible says 365 times, have no fear, it's designed to create fear, and it's designed to create somebody who is compliant to working within a set bandwidth of parameters that's acceptable to that religion. So, bouncing between the two. You have a path. You don't stray from the path. You walk on the path. And if you walk on the path, you get a pat on the back by your fellow parishioners or whoever else it is. And that sense of well-being and achievement enforces the control mechanism of the mind. Now, I'm lucky I never went into religion. It's not one of the things I've ever done. So, I've obviously observed religion in the last few years. I know more about religion in the last few years than I did for the rest of my life previously. And it's only from research that I've done. I went to church as a young child because I was taken to church. I was baptized and all the bits and pieces. But I am not religious. But I have values that could be promoted as Christian values. They could also be promoted as Muslim values. They could also be promoted as Buddhist values or any other religion values. Makes no difference. But there is a mind control and a system that leads you down a certain path when you go into the religious cultism. Now, the non-religion and those who are atheist and label themselves as atheists is almost the same as that religious cultism. It's just the other side, the yin and the yang, both connected. Okay. I prefer to stand in the middle, as you know. I observe and do not absorb. The center line is always the line that I try to maintain because I can observe both sides and make an informed choice without an emotional attachment to that. And that was a very difficult one to create and to get to as well, I can assure you. To have no expectation of the outcome is a very difficult thing to do. because that's about breaking the expectation of the contract that you have in your head. In the first part, I used an example of this pen actually being called a pencil and breaking that constraint. Now, the research that goes into it and the observation of all the facts will hopefully lead me to a conclusion that is correct, or more likely to be correct than it is wrong. And over the time and period of doing lots and lots of research, you come across the same subjects from different angles that would then confirm that this isn't actually a pencil, it is a pen. Okay, so you see the part one for the explanation of what I'm just talking about, because that probably sounds quite crazy in isolation. So what we're doing is it's that understanding of standing in your own power, observing what's going on and making your own mind up without emotional connection and without the connection of the result you want to find. Okay, and that will often lead to some really interesting developments that you never expected. And it's happened to me a lot. I've come across stuff and the expectation is this, that, or the other. And when I've looked into it, I've been completely wrong. And it's like, oh, but being wrong is also a positive because we can then see from being wrong how we got it wrong. And we can then observe our own emotional response to that as well, because this is all about emotional growth, spiritual growth, and understanding your own mind. You know, it's not about understanding anybody else's mind, it's understanding how you work and being the best version of yourself, or a version of yourself that you like and can live with and you're happy with, to then be able to grow and continue. So religion is definitely a huge cult, and it's a control mechanism that has been placed upon us by a third party. One of the other ones is the government, and government actually means to govern the mind. So the word says it all, doesn't it? Government, govern the mind, control the mind. Now, the government is definitely a cult, but the government uses force to to maintain its power, and it also uses coercion. So the government, to govern the mind, is also in charge of the school, where you're taught the government's curriculum. And we all know that the government is controlled by external entities, and the schools don't actually teach anything apart from mind control fundamentally. So, but the government will use something called the law, and the law is a cult because the law is used as the big stick to make sure that you follow the mind control system of the government within the road, and so you don't stray off the path, because if you stray off the path, you're going to get hit by a big stick by a man wearing black who's going to take you to a building for a man wearing black wearing sheep's hat to decide what they're going to do with you. Is that freedom, or is that a control mechanism? And so again, religion is something that I've looked into The government is something I've looked into. The court system is something I've looked into. The schools are something I've looked into. The police and the corruption of is something I've looked into. Because these are all part of the mind control of cults. And to stand back and observe what they truly are, many people don't. We also have the societal cult, where the majority of the society, and we'll go back to the pencil and the pen example, where society tells you this is a pencil. You're taught at school it's a pencil. And religion tells you it's a pencil. But from your own research, you know it's not. You know it's a pen. But when you go to friends, family, or if you went into a local pub and say, "Hey guys, girls, this isn't a pencil, it's a pen." They'd laugh at you, call you stupid, and they'd call you a conspiracy theorist or some other label or name that they think's hurty, hurty words. Because none of them are prepared to look at themselves and break their mind control system of understanding. Because they want to fit in. They want to be a herd because that's what they were taught at school. Because no one wants to step outside that path. And we all have. You know, you wouldn't be watching me if you hadn't. Okay. But this, you know. So the other cult, and probably one of the biggest ones, is money. Because not only is money a cult, it's also a control mechanism, probably the ultimate control mechanism they have. It's also one of the biggest slave systems that they have currently, called debt slavery, in fact, because we're all debt slaves currently. Very few people are not. Now, those who have watched me before know that my opinion on money is a pointless, worthless thing. Doesn't really exist as far as I'm concerned. It's a control mechanism that's used to fulfill and back up the cult system of religion, government, and society. But when you really truly understand what money is and how it's used and how you can get round the system, and there are ways to get round the system. Certainly at the moment, we have the opportunity to really break the system and get around it because we're about to go through a huge change in that system. That system is now collapsing. And when the monetary system collapses, what we see is society collapses, government collapses, and religion has a big wobble. Now, religion is part of the control mechanism of the government and the system. Bit of a tangent here, but during the potato famine in Ireland, when everybody starved, no priest ever starved. No priest ever starved during the potato famine. The priests always had food on their table, just as the government did, just as the police would have. Think about that one. That's probably triggered one or two of you as well, but it's what it is, isn't it? It's what it is. It's what it is. Now, I'm going to take this a step further and say that The truther movement is also a cult because you have people, and self included at times, certainly in the beginning, searching for something, searching for spiritual guidance, searching for guidance, not really knowing what you're looking for. And as that open, empty vessel of possibilities, you then have those that are not beneficial, those that are there, that are being placed there by religion, government, and society, controllers, the gatekeepers, and those gatekeepers are in the truther movement to ensure that you do not continue taking those steps up the ladder of enlightenment and truth and self-development. But within the truther movement, with the mindfulness and understanding how the system works and understanding the expectations that you have and the contracts that you create in your mind and the societal mind control and understanding how you can lessen that and break it, it gives you the opportunity to step off the road, off the path, and start your own path. It allows you to drop the fear and it allows you to empower yourself. And this is what those mind control cults fear the most. Because when somebody spiritually awakens, steps back, observes, does not absorb the energy, but observes what's going on around them, in the neutrality of love, consciousness, that soul is uncontrollable and has got sovereign power upon themselves and needs to go to nobody or no one or nothing to ask permission to do anything they don't want to do. Now, of course, we have to play within the game of the construct, but there are many things that can be done and many things you can do to bend those rules and break the construct and walk your own path and create your own reality tunnels. The reality tunnels towards freedom, enlightenment, and our true power. Because we are the true power. And those in control know this and they fear this, which is why they've created such a complex mechanism of control and fear to keep us down. Now, those times are changing very, very quickly. We're about to go through the biggest change that we've ever seen. And certainly, I'm not sure that the kind of change we've seen has been seen for thousands of years. And we're now in it. We're now in this change. And so being mindful of the changes that are coming and not getting drawn into or sucked into the energy of others is very difficult. Standing in your own sovereign power with the breaking of the expectations and contracts that you had upon yourself, knowing yourself truly, being happy with yourself, loving yourself, and most importantly, forgiving yourself in love. being able to analyze your reactions, actions towards certain stimuli. We all react in ways that we shouldn't do at times. Nobody's perfect. But to then understand that and to sit back and analyze what you've done in the personal, see why you felt that, why were you triggered, why did you act in that way, how could you have done it differently, should you have done it differently, or did you actually do the right thing in acting and reacting in that way? Because it's about breaking the mind control of our own expectations, our own contracts that we make, as well as breaking the external cult control mechanisms to keep us chained and that have taught us and educated us to chain ourselves. Because we have this. We really do have this now. Huge change is coming. I mentioned it briefly in part one. You know, recorded this on the 24th. This will be going out on the 25th of September. We've just gone through the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of September. Huge energies. For one day, I felt like the entire world was just slowly spinning. Felt very strange, titchy almost. Energy in my chest upwards. Couldn't ground myself. Couldn't. It was just very, very strange energy. But I was mindful of it. And I was mindful, very mindful of my action and reactions to stimuli external around me and my own thoughts in that time. And luckily, I'd done an amazing show with Gordon on the hypnosis and was able to produce two quality content shows while that energy was going on and I didn't have to. Today, the energies have released a bit. I still feel it in my neck and my shoulders. Still feel that energy in my head and the heaviness of it all. I still feel all that. But today I'm able to put something together that kind of makes sense and hopefully can be followed rather than potentially what I would have garbled out a couple of days ago. So the mindfulness of everything we do and the growth for where we're going and what we're doing. It's all about understanding how our own selves work, breaking our own chains, our own restrictions that we place upon ourselves, and also looking at the rules, the externalized rules of society, government, the control mechanism, and stepping off that path in a mindful way that doesn't cause detriment to ourselves, but enhances ourselves and shows and gives light, love, and power to those around us. Because remember, when we shine, our light shines everywhere else, and that light that shines destroys the darkness. Love by Jenny put this in an amazing way the other day. She said, one little tea light in a room will light the entire room. Be the tea light, light the room. We have this, everything is as it should be. But the mindfulness and the control of ourselves and what's going on, how we work upon ourselves, is always a continuous journey and one that we make all the time to become the best version of ourselves, to be heart-centered, to be centered in ourselves, to observe and not absorb the energy, to allow us to grow the most organic, beautiful way that we can within the realm of Gaia, Sophia, in Mother Nature. And with that, I shall say goodbye. Hopefully that's helpful. It's my journey. It's how I do it, and that'll give you some food for thought on moving forward and enjoying this. Don't forget to enjoy it. It's not all hard work. Make sure you have fun. Make sure you do the things you love doing. Okay? Do the things you love. Make sure you have time for yourself to do the things you love doing. Get out into nature, ground yourself, and enjoy the beauty of this realm, because it is a beautiful realm. And when you see the beauty and you smile, that destroys the darkness every time. Love, light, and blessings, everybody. Thank you very much.